Around 100,000 years ago, long before cities, before religion, before written language, a human being died. Maybe it was a child, maybe a hunter, maybe someone old enough to watch generations disappear before them. But what mattered wasn't the death itself. Animals had always died. What mattered was what happened afterward, because for perhaps the first time in history, humans stopped and stared. Not like predators staring at meat, not like animals reacting to danger, but with something else, something disturbingly familiar: confusion, fear, grief. Somewhere in the darkness of prehistory, humans began realizing something no other creature fully understood. One day they would die too, and that realization may have changed humanity forever. Death is strange, not just emotionally, psychologically, because humans are one of the few species capable of understanding mortality before it happens. You know you're going to die long before death arrives, and your brain spends your entire life trying not to think about it. But ancient humans couldn't distract themselves the way modern people do. There were no phones, no endless entertainment, no artificial light. At night, there was only darkness, silence, fire, and thoughts, which meant early humans were forced to confront death constantly. A dead animal in the forest, a body near a river, a tribe member who never woke up. Death wasn't hidden away from society like it is today. It was everywhere, and eventually, humans began reacting to it differently than any species before them. Archaeologists discovered something strange in ancient burial sites. Bodies weren't simply abandoned. Some were carefully placed into the ground, curled into sleeping positions, surrounded by tools, flowers, objects, even animal bones. This changes everything, because burial rituals suggest something terrifying. Ancient humans may have believed death was not the end. Imagine that moment psychologically. A primitive human staring at a dead tribe member beside a fire. The body is still there, but something feels missing. The eyes no longer move, the voice is gone, the warmth disappears. To early humans, this must have felt supernatural, because consciousness itself is difficult to understand even today. And so the human brain did what it always does when facing uncertainty. It created meaning. This may have been the birth of spirituality, not from wisdom, but from fear. Humans desperately wanted to believe something continued after death because fully accepting non-existence is psychologically horrifying. Even modern brains struggle with it. Try imagining your own non-existence for more than a few seconds. You can't fully do it. Your mind keeps observing itself. That's because the human brain evolved for survival, not existential acceptance. And ancient humans likely experienced this same terror for the very first time, except unlike us, they had no philosophy, no science, no explanation, only mystery. Some scientists believe this awareness of death may have separated humans from every other species, because once humans understood mortality, everything changed. Suddenly, relationships mattered differently, memories mattered differently, time mattered differently. Life itself became psychologically heavier. A sunset was no longer just light in the sky. It became temporary, and temporary things become emotional. Maybe that's why humans developed art, why they painted cave walls, why they buried the dead carefully, why they told stories around fires. Humans were trying to fight disappearance, trying to leave fragments of themselves behind, because deep down they already understood something terrifying. Everything alive eventually vanishes. There's another disturbing possibility. Ancient grief may have been far more intense than modern grief, because prehistoric humans lived in small tribes. Every person mattered deeply for survival. Losing someone didn't just create sadness, it changed the entire structure of life. A hunter dies, food becomes scarce. A mother dies, children may not survive. A protector dies, the tribe becomes vulnerable. Death wasn't abstract, it was immediate, personal, violent. And because life was already difficult, emotional bonds may have become incredibly powerful, which means grief itself may have shaped the human brain. Some psychologists believe empathy evolved partly because social connection improved survival. If true, then mourning the dead may actually be part of what made humans human. And yet humans did something strange with grief, something no other species developed to this extent. Ritual. Think about that. Rituals don't physically stop death, they don't reverse loss, but psychologically rituals create control. Structure reduces fear. That's why humans still perform rituals today. Funerals, memorials, prayers, graves, moments of silence. These behaviors calm existential anxiety. Even ancient humans may have understood this instinctively. A burial ritual transforms chaos into meaning, and the human brain desperately needs meaning when facing death. But perhaps the most disturbing realization came later. At some point, ancient humans stopped fearing only other people's deaths and began fearing their own. Imagine sitting beside a fire 40,000 years ago. The night is silent, the stars stretch endlessly overhead, and suddenly a horrifying thought enters your mind. One day I will disappear too. That moment may have been one of the most psychologically important moments in human history, because awareness of personal mortality changes behavior completely. It creates anxiety, ambition, religion, legacy, purpose, fear, maybe even civilization itself. There's actually a psychological theory connected to this. It's called terror management theory. The theory suggests that much of human behavior exists to cope with awareness of death. People seek achievement, identity, meaning, religion, status, legacy, because these things create the illusion of permanence. Humans want to feel like some part of them will continue after death, and maybe ancient humans felt this too. Maybe the first cave paintings weren't just art. Maybe they were proof that I was here. And strangely, modern humans are not very very different. We still fear disappearance constantly. We photograph everything, record videos, build graves, write names into stone. Social media itself is partly an archive of human existence. People desperately trying to preserve fragments of themselves before time erases them. Because somewhere deep inside the brain, that ancient fear still exists. The same fear felt beside prehistoric fires tens of thousands of years ago. The fear of becoming nothing. But death didn't just create fear. It created consciousness itself in a way. Because once humans understood life could end, life became meaningful. Temporary things always feel more emotional. A flower that blooms forever becomes invisible, but a flower that dies becomes beautiful. And maybe humans became emotional creatures the moment they realized they were temporary too. There's something deeply unsettling about ancient graves, not because they contain skeletons, but because they contain evidence of thought, emotion, love, fear. Some prehistoric burial sites show humans placing red ochre over the dead. Others contain jewelry, weapons, tools, even flowers. One grave discovered in Iraq appeared to contain pollen surrounding the body, suggesting humans may have buried their dead with flowers over 60,000 years ago. Think about that for a moment. A species struggling to survive against starvation, disease, predators, freezing temperatures still stopped long enough to mourn. That means something powerful was happening inside the human mind. Because grief is not efficient, it doesn't help survival directly, yet humans evolved to feel it intensely. Why? Because humans aren't built merely to survive physically. We are built to survive socially, and death tears holes into the social world of the brain. Modern neuroscience shows that emotional pain activates many of the same brain regions as physical pain. In other words, the brain treats loss almost like an injury, which explains why grief can feel physically crushing. Tight chest, exhaustion, numbness, loss of appetite, disorientation. Ancient humans likely experienced this same suffering, except without understanding what was happening psychologically. Imagine losing someone in a prehistoric world. No therapist, no explanation, no certainty, only silence. And perhaps that silence itself shaped human consciousness, because death creates questions. Questions animals don't seem to ask. Where did they go? Will I see them again? Why do humans die? What happens after this? And the human brain hates unanswered questions, so it creates stories. This may explain why nearly every civilization in history developed beliefs about an afterlife. Even cultures completely separated by oceans often imagined spirits, souls, another world, ancestors watching from somewhere beyond death. This is psychologically fascinating because it suggests humans may be naturally wired to resist the idea of non-existence. The brain struggles to imagine consciousness ending. You can imagine darkness, silence, sleep, but true non-existence. Your mind keeps trying to observe it from the outside, which is impossible. And ancient humans probably experienced this same mental contradiction for the first time beneath dark prehistoric skies. Nighttime may have made these fears even worse. Today, cities are filled with noise and light, but ancient nights were different. Completely dark, completely silent, no electricity, no streetlights, only stars and distant sounds beyond the fire. Under those conditions, the human imagination becomes dangerous. The brain starts searching the darkness for meaning, predators, spirits, threats. This is one reason humans naturally fear darkness even today. Your brain evolved in environments where darkness genuinely meant danger, and death was part of that danger. Some anthropologists believe nighttime storytelling became essential because it psychologically united tribes against fear. Stories transformed uncertainty into structure. Even horror stories serve this purpose today. Humans would rather imagine monsters than accept meaningless chaos. But eventually humans developed something even stranger than stories: legacy. At some point, people began caring about being remembered after death. That's an extraordinary psychological shift because it means humans discovered symbolic immortality. If your body dies, maybe your name survives, your tribe remembers you, your children remember you, your paintings remain on cave walls, and suddenly death feels slightly less absolute. This instinct still controls modern civilization more than people realize. Why do people write books, create art, build monuments, become famous, obsess over social media, want recognition? Partly because humans fear disappearing psychologically. Being forgotten can feel almost like a second death, and ancient humans may have feared this too. There's another possibility that's even darker. Awareness of death may have created human anxiety itself, because once the brain understands the future, it also understands loss. Animals mostly react to immediate threats. Humans suffer from imagined futures. You can feel fear for something that hasn't happened yet, including death. This ability helped humans survive. Planning ahead improved survival chances, but it also created existential dread. Humans became trapped between intelligence and awareness of mortality, a terrifying combination. Smart enough to understand death, but emotional enough to fear it constantly. And maybe this explains why humans distract themselves so much. Modern life is filled with endless stimulation, scrolling, entertainment, noise, work, goals, routines, because silence often forces people to confront uncomfortable thoughts, including mortality. That ancient fear never disappeared. It simply evolved with civilization. Even now, many people become most existential late at night, right before sleep, when distractions fade, and suddenly the mind remembers life is temporary. There's something tragic about that realization. Every human throughout history experienced it eventually. Kings, hunters, children, philosophers. Everyone reaches a a moment where death stops feeling abstract and becomes personal, and psychologically that changes everything. It can make people more grateful, more anxious, more spiritual, more ambitious, more depressed, more compassionate, sometimes all at once. Awareness of death shapes personality more than people realize. In fact, studies show that reminding people of mortality can subtly change behavior immediately afterward. People become more emotional, more defensive of beliefs, more attached to identity, more drawn toward meaning and connection. It's as if the brain instinctively searches for psychological stability when confronted with death. And maybe ancient rituals were doing the same thing, creating emotional stability in a terrifying world. But perhaps the strangest part of all this is that death may have accidentally created beauty. Think about it. If humans lived forever, sunsets would lose meaning, memories wouldn't matter, relationships wouldn't feel urgent, time would feel endless. Mortality gives emotional weight to existence. Temporary things feel precious precisely because they end. And maybe ancient humans slowly realize this too, that life becomes meaningful because it disappears. One day, tens of thousands of years ago, a human probably sat beside a fire after a burial, watching sparks rise into the darkness, thinking thoughts no creature had fully thought before, questions about existence, about time, about disappearance, about what it means to be alive at all. And in that moment, humanity may have truly begun.